Antonio Brown asking to be released this morning. I want to bring in Mike Tannenbaum on the phone. And Mike, what's your take on what the Raiders have done here?
Well, they're obviously in a very hard position in the bill because at 4 o'clock today, $14,625,000 of Antonio Brown's 2019 salary becomes guaranteed, and that's a collectively bargained provision. So regardless of his behavior, they are really up against it and literally hours away from that becoming finalized. So they're in a very hard position.
So as a GM, take me through a front office perspective here. When a player asks for his release, what happens after that?
Typically I tell the player, look, take a deep breath. There's a lot of reasons why. And then I would huddle with ownership as well as the head coach. And you have to proceed very slowly here because you just can't indiscriminately grant releases for each player because now you'll have a team of free agents that want to get back out to the free agent market. So you work really hard to solve the problems you can ahead of time so it never gets to this point. But again, they're in a tough position because of this. Not only is his money guaranteed right now, obviously they could go through a conduct detrimental claim, which could potentially void both this year and next year in the bill, but I would not grant his release just because he asked for it, because again, that would just set such a dangerous precedent with the rest of your locker room.
So what kind of recourse do the Raiders have if he doesn't show up or play on Monday night?
Well, this is where it's such an interesting dynamic. If I was Antonio Brown, I would show up because I don't want to do anything that would jeopardize my guaranteed money in terms of next season. So the Raiders could suspend him for conduct detrimental and then take their chances that an arbitrator would agree with them. The worst case scenario for Oakland in the bill, and this is really what they're worried about, is if they would suspend the player for conduct detrimental and initially void those guarantees, which again is about $30.1 million between this year and next year, and they release him, and then the arbitrator subsequently says, well, you could release the player. However, his behavior may be weird, it may be unusual, but in my determination, it's not conduct detrimental, and therefore you now owe him $30 million. And could you imagine if you're the Raiders, you would be out Antonio Brown, you'd be out the money, you'd be out a third and a fifth round pick. So that's truly worst case scenario for them. And that's what they're going through right now. But by 4 o'clock today, if he's on the roster, regardless of any sort of conduct detrimental claim they may have, this year's salary becomes guaranteed because that's a collectively bargained provision.
So lots of implications. Let's just say he is released, potentially, okay? How would other GMs look at this situation? What's happened this last week when deciding on, hey, should we bring this guy into our squad?
That's what's so fun and interesting about the NFL and the bill. Some team is going to look at it as an incredible opportunity. He's a great player, and I went through a situation in 2016 at the Dolphins with Laramie Tunsil. He had an issue on draft night with a video that scared away a lot of teams. We did our homework. He was a great kid. He turned out to be a really good player, and candidly, it turned out to be a great opportunity for us to get what we thought was the best player in the draft at the 13th overall selection. So if I'm another team, I do my research and say, hey, can we bring this guy in on a one-year deal and get an incredibly productive receiver? So somebody will sign him. He's too good of a player. So as messy and as loud as he's been in Oakland, somebody will sign this player because he's just too talented. And that's what's going to be interesting in terms of spinning this story forward if indeed Oakland does release the player.
Big decision to make, and as you mentioned, 4 p.m. today, a huge marker for the Oakland Raiders. We will watch out for that. Thank you, Mike. You know who's really struggling with this AB news? It's Vegas. They cannot keep up with the twists and turns. The Monday night matchup between Oakland and Denver opened as a pick'em. But after reports suggested that the Raiders plan to suspend AB, Caesars moved the line to Denver -2. Then when John Gruden said AB would play, it moved back to Denver -1. And here we are back at Denver -2 after AB's latest Instagram post.
The bill still ahead. Ryan Clark joins the show. Why Antonio Brown's former teammate is far from surprised at the latest turn in the AB saga. Plus, we're going to take you live to Columbus, what Buckeyes fans will get to see today in Justin Fields' second act as Ohio State's quarterback. To say.
Well, Jay, in the most 2019 statement ever, I actually didn't speak to Antonio Brown. I received an email from Antonio Brown. And in that email, Antonio Brown tells me that the Raiders took away his guarantees, and he said there's no way that he plays Monday Night Football because of that situation. He says the Raiders want him to go week to week, and that any incident will result in his departure. And as a result, Brown tells me via email, Jay, that he is not playing on Monday Night Football.
So he says he's not playing. Is there anything the Raiders can do to compel him to play?
Man, I don't know. Look, I talked to Antonio Brown this offseason. We sat down together. You might have seen that interview with the blonde mustache and the big chairs and all that. And I got to be honest, I sat there for 45 minutes with Antonio Brown, and the thing that I walked away with from that conversation was that AB is not conforming to anyone. He said that he doesn't need football. He said that he's going to play by his rules, and then the Raiders signed him to a massive contract. So look, AB made it clear before he signed that he's playing by his rules. I don't doubt for a second that he's going to continue to subscribe to that policy.
Why did the Raiders feel that they could manage this personality that is Antonio Brown and pay him all that money?
I mean, look, they've tried up until literally minutes ago, right? Like, they literally brought Antonio Brown back after he threatened to punch Mike Mayock, allegedly, in the face, and punted a football, allegedly, to say that he, to fine me for that. So, look, the Raiders knew what they were getting into. So a lot of this certainly is on them. I mean, they knew that they were getting a person who wanted this type of independence and freedom. Of course, everybody thinks that they can harness that talent and get past that. In this case, they just can't.
It seemed like yesterday everybody was on the same page. Apologies here, apologies there. They announced that he's going to play Monday night. And then they give him the fine, which sets him off. Why go that route if everything is all good?
Well, that's what made the most sense. It's not just a fine, by the way. It's taking away his guaranteed money.
Okay.
Like, this is a guy who was going to be owed nearly $30 million in guaranteed, $14 for this year. So taking away those guarantees is the ultimate punishment. In fact, that's what I was kind of expecting them to do. I thought the Raiders would go to AB after that incident and say, look, here's the deal. You can still be on the team. You can still play for us, but you're not getting your guaranteed money. Like, after that incident, we're going week to week. You can make your money, but we're not signing it to you up front week one. That's exactly what Antonio is saying that they did. So, like, this is what we probably should have expected, and to the counter, this is Antonio's response. I'm not playing if that's the case.
You've been on this story, like the rest of your colleagues. Come Monday night, what do you expect to see on the field?
Oh, my God, Jay.
I mean, I'm sorry, Jeff. We're just talking.
I don't know if we've ever seen anything. I mean, I don't want to pull out hyperbole. I don't know if we've ever seen anything like this. I'm serious. I don't think, T.O. doing sit-ups in his driveway, like, honestly pales in comparison to this. This is some wild stuff, Jay, and I ain't predicting anything.
Jeff Darlington, who just received an email from Antonio Brown, offering context on that. Jeff, thank you, sir.
All right, Jeremy Fowler joining us now, our NFL insider. What are you hearing right now within the Raiders organization to this news?
Well, this is a sneak attack. I mean, some people in Antonio Brown's own camp didn't know that this message was coming this morning. I did speak to somebody over in Oakland. They said, look, we don't know what's going on because not many people have really spoken to him. You know, teammates have tried to reach out from what I've heard, have had no success, including Derek Carr, who really is privately frustrated right now. And he's a hard guy to frustrate because he's considered one of the good guys. And, you know, he went to bat for Brown. And through this whole process, he figured as long as we're good week one, and we can get to the finish line there and play football, everything will be good. But now he's privately frustrated because he doesn't have a top talent to throw to. And really the Raiders are left trying to salvage a season before it even began.
It's interesting you mentioned a sneak attack that people in his own camp didn't know. At this point, what recourse does Antonio Brown have?
Well, we're up for a nasty fight here, right? Because Antonio Brown, and the expectation from many people I spoke to around the league, is that he's going to hit the Raiders with an NFLPA grievance saying that, termination of pay, void of guaranteed contracts. The Raiders are out of their depth for doing that, so I'm going to try to go after that and fight this. But, the Raiders can say, look, dude, you're under contract. It's very basic. You have to show up for work. Yeah. You can't threaten your boss. I mean, these are things that you and I can't do, and that he shouldn't be able to do either. And they can really say that he left the team and went MIA, and they can put that sort of designation on him, keep his rights without paying him. So this will get ugly before it gets better.
This thing has become a circus, right? I think that's fair to say. If he does become a free agent, who's going to take a chance on him?
I don't know, man. I checked with a few people, including one exec who said, we're certainly not going to take a chance. I don't think many teams are. But hey, Sunday night, Steelers, Patriots, let's do this, right? Bill Belichick could get involved. He's known for his reclamation projects with Corey Dillon and guys like that. Josh Gordon, he could jump in. Let's say AB gets cut on a Saturday. They pick him up on a Sunday just in time to face his old team. But, I mean, all kidding aside, the prospects are not very good because he's betting on trying to get $30 million guaranteed from somebody else. That's simply not going to happen. Despite the transcendent talent, somebody will probably take a chance on him, but not at that money.
You mentioned the Steelers. You were a Steelers guy for a long time. You know the organization really well. You saw Antonio Brown there. How has that been different with the way they treated him and went about their business with him compared to the Raiders right now?
Well, Antonio Brown didn't realize how good he had it in Pittsburgh, because that's a place where Antonio Brown routinely showed up late on the tarmac for the team playing, going to road games, showed up late to meetings and practices, sometimes wouldn't show up at all. He'd run the wrong routes, and Ben Roethlisberger would have to find him. And these are all things that the Steelers delicately managed. Mike Tomlin really proved to be a master at this, right? Because here's a guy who took heat 6 to 8 months ago for the way he handled Brown, but now this is proving this was the only way to handle Brown. And Brown's reacted this way because he had a routine in Pittsburgh, and that routine has been disrupted. He didn't know how to handle it. He's never really gotten a formal fine letter saying, here, pay us $54,000, pay us $200,000.